Hey guys, welcome to Solo ReacTalk. Today I'm going to be reacting to a Linfamy History of Japan video. This one is titled The Yayoi Arrived, Changed Everything. Now, before I watched the previous Histories of Japan by Linfamy, where he was talking about the Jonmin people arriving to Japan and the Ainu. Yeah, the Ainu people. Now we're talking about the third group coming to Japan, and that is the Yayoi. All right. Three, two, one, go.
During the Yayoi period, the Japanese got tired of hunting and gathering and settled down into an agricultural society. Japan developed late in the game, historically, compared to China and the West. When these other cultures were already firmly established and bullying their neighbors, Japan was messing around with this new thing called farming. The Yayoi period lasted from 300 BC to 250 AD. It roughly coincides with the Chinese Han Dynasty. It begins soon after the death of Alexander the Great and the end of Greece's classical period, the period that most people picture when they think of ancient Greece. At the end of the Yayoi period, the Roman Empire was already past its prime. We don't know for sure where the Yayoi came from, but the predominant view is they were the shovel-teethers that we discussed in a previous video here. They migrated to a Japan already inhabited by the Jomon for thousands of years, bringing with them new methods of wet rice farming and metalworking. These new people had the impossibly beautiful Asian features that persist to this day. Another hypothesis is they grew out of the Jomon, meaning the Jomon invented wet rice cultivation and iron making, and progressed to an agricultural society. This is probably not true, because the end of the Jomon period was not a prosperous time where they had the luxury of trying new and creative things. The Jomon were struggling. Food was scarce. They were too busy trying to survive, trying to find new sources of meat and nuts. There is a legend about the origin of the Yayoi that is often repeated. It goes like this. Psst, don't miss out. Click subscribe and the bell. The first emperor of a unified China was Emperor Qin Shi Huang, who founded the Qin dynasty. The job of emperor came with occupational hazards, such as people trying to kill you. 3 times did assassins make attempts on his life, and 3 times he escaped death. The emperor, paranoid and obsessed with finding a way to live forever, gave a mission to his court sorcerer, a man named Shufu. Set sail to find the mythical mountain of the immortals. There you must meet with a 1,000-year-old magician and retrieve from him the elixir of life, which grants immortality. To this, Shufu said, "Sure." Shufu gathered a fleet of ships and a few thousand excited souls and began his quest for the elusive elixir. A few anxious years later, he returned, empty-handed. He explained to the emperor, "Your Highness, there is a large sea monster blocking the way. Please give me a contingent of archers so that I may vanquish the monster and continue my absolutely reasonable quest." The emperor agreed. Shufu set sail again and never returned. Legend has it that Shufu actually landed in Japan because he thought Mount Fuji was the mythical mountain he was searching for, and he and his crew lived out the rest of their days there. He introduced wet rice farming, metalworking, and Chinese medicine to Japan, helping to start the Yayoi culture and Japan as we know it. As for Emperor Qin Shi Huang, he never got his immortality. Ironically, it may have been his obsession with living forever that killed him. One story explaining his death claims that he died from mercury poisoning. His doctors and alchemists made mercury pills for him to drink. They believed it would prolong his life. It didn't. Now, although we have records of Shufu's expeditions, this idea of him founding the Yayoi is likely just a legend because the timing of when bronze and iron were introduced to Japan doesn't work out. We don't know what happened to Shufu's expedition, if they got lost at sea or landed someplace. But if they did land someplace, said screw this, and never returned, would you blame them? They had an emperor counting on them to make him immortal. This was a time when people thought becoming immortal was within the realm of possibility. In the Emperor's eyes, if you failed him, you cut his life short. That's the same as you killing him. And so it would be wise to haul ass out of there. By the end of the Jomon, the society was exhausted. The land could no longer support the growing population. It had trouble replenishing the plants and animals. The Jomon had hunted and picked and cut for 10,000 years. Nature couldn't keep up. Nature was the dealer on Snoop Dogg's street. Sometimes you can't keep up. When the Yayoi came along, they had a massive advantage over the Jomon. Agriculture. Wet rice farming was a game changer. They didn't have to find edible plants or move where the animals moved. They just found a good spot, settled down, and farmed their rice paddies. The population boomed, like STDs in Russell Brand's neighborhood. We don't know whether the Yayoi killed off the earlier Jomon people that they encountered or just assimilated them. We clearly see Jomon influence in the Yayoi. They lived in pit dwellings like the Jomon and had pottery designs with some Jomon features. From studying their pottery, we see that the two cultures traded and interacted a lot, especially in the early Yayoi years. But there came a point where the Yayoi became so successful that they replaced most of the Jomon population to become the dominant culture. Their pottery was simpler than the Jomon's, more utilitarian. They also loved bronze mirrors and bells. Bells were the shit. They made a bunch of them. The bells were called dotaku and were made of bronze. They kept making bigger and bigger bells. Eventually, the bells couldn't even ring. They were just there and kept accumulating. The more bells you had, the cooler you became. They had no function except as objects for performing rituals. We have a similar thing in our society. They're called pop figures. They don't do anything and somehow just accumulate in your home. In a few years, we'll be using them in rituals.
Please, Lord, grant me my wish. I wish to be rich. Loopholes. I wish to be the ruler of a country.
The Yayoi brought change to a Japan that was stagnant for thousands of years. The change was dramatic, exceeding that of an industrial revolution. They had a religion that would later develop into the Shinto religion. The Japanese language and social class system originated from the Yayoi. They ushered in, overnight, a new beginning for Japanese culture. In the next video, we'll go in-depth into how the Yayoi lived. See ya. This is the worst.
Wow. Yeah, Linfamy. I wish to become a ruler of a country. Becomes a true ruler. Oh, all right. Yeah, this was interesting. So we don't really know exactly how the Yayoi came to Japan, whether it was through a legend of Shifu being sent by the emperor to look for the elixir of immortality, or I would guess that they came to Japan because maybe there was war in China, as you know, the first emperor of Japan, not emperor of Japan, emperor of China tried to unify the entire nation, and people were displaced because of war, or people became fugitives and they ran away and they tried to seek refuge somewhere far away from China. So probably the Yayoi people were refugees from China and South and Korea, or the legend Shifu sent out to look for the elixir of life, or they could have been just explorers. But it would have to be like a lot of explorers then. A lot of ships, a lot of explorers looking for a new home, away from the chaotic political warring factions of the dynasties of China. So yeah, it was quite interesting. And what happened to the German people, I think after watching the previous episode about the German people, it was quite obvious what was going to happen. You know, the German people were hunter gathering people, hunter gatherers, and the society was based on that, and thus they didn't really develop into a farming and agriculture kind of civilization yet. And like Linfamy said, the land could only support so many until came a day where it could no longer do that. It could no longer sustain the population that was growing on the Japanese mainland, and the people and the society started to decline. Just like I said in the previous video, maybe the reasons why the German people never went to war with one another is because they are mainly focused on survival. They're mainly focused on gathering food, making sure that they have a home, shelter, and making sure that they can continue on their lineage, like having children. So they didn't have the time to create countries and to create these powerful armies to fight amongst each other. They didn't have time for that stuff. They only had time for survival. And also from the previous video, he discussed that that the German people life expectancy was at least 30 years old. So if you're older than 30 years old, you were very lucky. And those who died at such a young age died due to malnutrition or diseases, but never something as drastic or as dramatic as war. So, yeah, the Yayoi people replaced the German people as the main people of Japan. And next week, we're going to delve deeper into their culture and into the people who migrated from China and Korea. Okay, guys, that's it for today with Linfamy. Hey, just getting funny. Like, really, he's. I love these little skits that he makes in his videos with his documentary. It's so fun. It's so enjoyable to watch. Okay, guys, that's it. Yeah, remember, if you like what you see, you can give me a like, comment on my video, or also subscribe to my channel. And if you like what you see, you can also click on the notification bell so you can be up to date with my latest videos. All right. Bye-bye.